So, where did the alt-right come from? I would like to tell you a story that is so cartoonishly absurd, it sounds like something that came from a comic book. And in a sense, it did, but it's also, unfortunately for us, real. And that's the story of how a message board about anime, founded by a 15-year-old kid in his mom's attic in 2003, spawned first a far-left hacktivist collective that had this profound impact on democratic societies around the world, and then just a few years later, the same anime message board spawned a far-right youth counterculture that is mixed up with fascism and far-right ideology and Nazi imagery. So how did this happen? Here is the image board. It's called 4chan.org. Here they are debating Pokemon. And the story begins around 2004, 2005, when the site's just getting wildly popular. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are using it because it's the first instance of something that really dominates how all of us communicate now, which is the attention economy. It really looks like a Facebook feed back in 2003, 2004, and it still looks like that now. It's a set of shuffling posts, and the most popular posts, the ones that get the most attention, the most replies, go to the top of that stream. So as this is getting wildly popular, another phenomenon comes along attendant with it, which is the idea of internet memes, which are also mixed up with all of your social media streams. The first ones appear also on 4chan.org. And what is 4chan's culture about? What are its memes about? Well, the user base of the site, these hundreds of thousands, they're all kids or young adolescent boys or men with the adolescent mindset of boys who spend all their time on the internet, and all the memes, or a lot of them, are joking about how they're forever alone. Yeah, here's a comic about a boy's relationship with his honey, endearing. How they're, quote unquote, in their mom's basement, how they spend all their time online. These are actual images I saved off this website from this era. But what this collective realizes is that though they are not very powerful in real life, they do have a lot of power online. As they grow to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, they can throw their weight around. They hack online polls. They raid chat rooms and dominate the discussion. They pull elaborate pranks. They do this thing, they call it raids, when they fill online virtual worlds. So here they are. Who do adolescent boys pick on? Well, younger kids. So here they are filling up a virtual world called Habbo Hotel for 10 and 11-year-old kids, little kids, to talk, and they use the same avatar to block access to the virtual online pool, so kids couldn't go to the virtual pool. So this is the thing they were doing. So all fun and games, but it takes this strange pivot into politics around 2008, and the point upon which it pivots is Tom Cruise and Scientology. So in 2008, a video leaks, you might remember this, a video leaks of Tom Cruise ranting rather incoherently about Scientology, and Scientology's lawyers remove it from the internet. 4chan, this now enormous collective of pranksters, gets angry. And they say, well, we want access to funny things on the internet, and we like internet freedom, we want to do what we want on the internet. So we're going to raid Scientology, but of course, Scientology is real. They would have to go into real life to do this. It's the biggest target yet. And they decide, well, okay, we'll pretend, since nothing like this has ever happened before, there's never been a collective of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that no one knows who they are, but that exists in fiction. That's like a secret society, like a secret cabal. So they decide that's what they're going to pretend to be, a secret society of hackers. And they release this video.
Hello, leaders of Scientology. We are anonymous. Over the years, we have been watching you. Anonymous has therefore decided that your organization should be destroyed.
And they call themselves anonymous because almost all posts on the site are anonymous, so they use that as a nickname for each other. So they say, we're this collective that's going to destroy you, and on a certain day and time, Scientology, thousands of people are going to appear in front of every single one of your temples all around the world as a harbinger of your destruction. And then that happened. They did that. This is in New York, where I went to report on them doing this. And here they are all around the world doing this. Here is a character dressed like the Habbo Hotel character in New York. So you can see it's kind of a prank that they're pulling, but it's half serious. And then you can see behind it another mask that we might recognize, another icon, the Guy Fawkes mask, which is derived from a comic book they liked, V for Vendetta, and has this historical association with Guy Fawkes, the rebel who tried to blow up Parliament. And now another strange pivot happens, where in the next few years, the template that 4chan established, organizing online for a political purpose, and then moving that political movement into real life, well, that occurs in Occupy Wall Street, in Tahrir Square in the Arab Spring, and 4chan's iconography. So here is also what the mask comes from, which is just a meme on 4chan. So it was also just a piece of iconography from 4chan. And so what occurs is that iconography, those memes, 4chan's technique of generating memes, it just flows through all of these movements. And 4chan's template for how to protest, how to resist, how to enter politics just is generated worldwide, is sort of propagated worldwide through all these other protest movements. And then there's this strange moment where the hacker group becomes real. So Anonymous, the hacker group they pretend it to be, well, there are enough people in this collective who are hackers, who are powerful enough, who decide, well, we're going to fill that idea and make it real. And then as this is going on, we're up to 2011, during Occupy Wall Street, 2012. Well, there's a kind of a crisis. And just like Occupy Wall Street, there's this kind of shimmering, revolutionary moment when it could become anything. Nothing like this has just ever happened before. You don't have a collective of millions of people online because online didn't exist before. You don't have online pushing itself into politics because online didn't exist before. And so everyone thinks, well, what is it going to be? And there's this idea of like a leaderless molecular collective. How are we going to push this movement? People inside the movement didn't know what it would become. People outside the movement were wondering what it would become. But it turns out, kind of just like Occupy Wall Street, that's also a weakness where, since there wasn't a particular direction, it began to fragment and balkanize. And so Anonymous, the hacker collective, splits off, and a lot of those people get swept up by the FBI. 4chan has sort of a crisis of conscience, and at this point, there are other, it's a constellation of copycat sites. So this group says, well, what are we about? We're really about retreat, what we've always been about, which is going back to the internet, being forever alone, being in our mom's basements, goofing off. That's, I guess, the core of our culture. Now, this is a strange moment for the group because, well, think about it. You have these two sociological phenomena. The first one is everything that Occupy Wall Street was a protest against, right? Young people don't have jobs. They're burdened by student debt. They're disenchanted with a culture that is obsessed with materialism. They don't feel like there's very much in real life for them. And for males, which is mostly 4chan's user base, that's economic success is also mixed up with romantic success. So combine that with an ever-expanding virtual world, an ever more fascinating online world that's full of elaborate virtual video games, escapism through all these screen diversions. Well, obviously, if those two things converge, what you get is a youth culture that says, hey, I'm about retreat. I don't have anything to do with the real world. I'm interested in just going behind my screen and living there. And that philosophy, which develops around that time, it begins to swing to the right. And why it swings to the right? Well, you have to understand that at the same time, parallel to 4chan, was another wildly popular teen image board, also founded by a teenager, called Tumblr. And they first developed what was cool and uncool among teens, then what was moral and amoral, and then their own set of politics. And that image board had a lot of women and young girls on it, and their philosophy was based in feminism. And it was also based on something that was interesting to teens, which was identifying yourself, defining yourself. So they based their philosophy and their politics around cobbling together a complex identity out of sexuality and ethnicity. And then attended upon this was this feminist idea that cis white males, as they called them, or heterosexual white males. They were privileged in a way that these other ethnicities weren't. So the goal of politics is to lift everyone up together on the same level. A valid argument. But imagine if you're in this group of disenfranchised young men, those people don't feel privileged. You can see how this would alienate them. And as the internet is pulling politics to the left and the leftist politics in this direction, all of this collective that 4chan began with begins to push to the right because of that. So this all comes to a head in 2014 during this strange controversy called Gamergate, which no one understood at the time. It was so weird. And it essentially devolved into a harassment campaign online against women. And to understand why that happened, well, why all of these young men were motivated to do that, well, their complaint was that they didn't want feminism and fair depictions of women in video games. A bizarre complaint, right? Well, the idea was that they had escaped those places and they felt like that was their last redoubt. They felt empowered, only effective in video games. And they felt, I want to engage in this fantasy because I don't have any romantic success in real life. So they deeply resented this idea. Strange argument, but it's there in black and white in the writings of what we now consider leaders of the alt-right, Mike Cernovich, Milo Yiannopoulos. These people hitched their rising start at Gamergate. They were nobodies before Gamergate. And that's the thing that pushed them into a larger sphere of online notoriety. That's 2014. 2015, Trump begins his campaign. Trump uncannily echoes a lot of this. There's this 4chan slang, epic win, epic fail, which just became internet slang. And Trump, too, speaks about winning. You're going to win so much, you're going to get sick of winning. And then he calls people losers. This idea of masculine competition, of winning and losing. Well, if you're saying you're going to win so much, you're going to get sick of winning, who are you speaking to? Well, you're speaking to people who regard themselves as losers, right? People who are like, I haven't won in so long. How are you going to help me win? So here is Trump depicted as Pepe the Frog. People were confused by this too. Hillary released an explainer. This is Trump tweeting himself as Pepe. Pepe was simply a meme from 4chan, excerpted from a leftist webcomic. He was like a hippie-ish character that was a loser young guy who lived with roommates. And you can see he's happy at first. And I love that there's real scientists up here doing real evolutionary charts. And yeah, look at the evolutionary of this cartoon frog that I found on the internet. Don't look on that side. That's a gross side. Look on that side. You can see Pepe gets angrier and angrier until he's in the beta uprising, beta as opposed to alpha male. So there's another language of masculine competition and losing that masculine competition. So they get angry and they get radicalized. Here's Donald Trump Jr. also retweeting his dad, or re-Instagramming his dad as Pepe. So that gets us pretty far to the right, but it doesn't get us to fascism and Nazi ideology. And to understand that, you have to think about, well, how do you imagine society? Is society a cooperative collective where everyone gets together because if you work together, everyone is lifted up together? Or is it, in fact, the inversion of that? Is it a competition? So the way that Trump paints it oftentimes, the way that business or capitalist ideology often paints it, is this idea that, everyone's getting together to compete and everyone is my rival. And when they compete, it creates a hierarchy of winners at the top and then losers who take my commands at the bottom. Well, if you imagine that's how society is structured, which is the way a lot of people picture it, and also, you're on the bottom. You imagine that you're on the bottom. Well, how would you ever get to the top? The only way is to imagine that some group has unrightfully usurped a place at the top. And then you imagine some scapegoat, immigrants, minorities, Jewish conspiracy, some delusion of people that exist at the top that aren't supposed to be there, and the only way to get up there is to displace them, put them somewhere at the bottom again, flip the pyramid. So this was the theory for how fascism arose in the 30s and 40s. And you can kind of see the same dynamics occurring again today. So how do we fix it? Well, the first step is to obviously just look beyond the irony and all this bizarre imagery to see who this group is. They're obviously a group of young, disenfranchised people who feel like they're so angry at society, they're so frustrated that they can't change it, that they instead want to destroy it. That's how disaffected they are. Well, there are practical solutions to that, right? You make life better for people at the bottom. Universal basic income, access to education, access to healthcare, real practical solutions. But beyond that, you also have to note that this came out of a frustrated attempt to change things from the left. So you also have to think, well, the real solution, the way that it's really going to change, is not just by tweaking or managing things, but keeping the status quo the same, but really thinking about imaginative ways to reorganize society so that no one feels like they're on the bottom, to really organize society in a way where everyone feels like they're equal and they have an equal part. Thank you.